Miller in the meeting.
Good afternoon, Linda.
Hi, Paula. How are you?
I'm well. How about you?
I'm well.
Excellent. You're our first person tonight, so just kick back for a little bit.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey there, good evening.
Evening.
I'm testing my audio. Can you hear me?
Very
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Good to see all of you.
Nice to hear you, Alice.
Good to hear you too, Linda.
Alice, I know we talked earlier today, but are you going to be doing the staff report for this instead of Dawn?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, is her name on here? Yes, sorry about that. I should have changed it. Yeah, she prepared this, so she gets credit for all the writing. She just isn't here tonight.
Okay. I guess I'll give it another couple minutes, 2 more minutes, but I think we do have a quorum right now, but I'll give it another 2 minutes to see if anyone else shows up.
Vice Chair Cornett.
Yeah, yes, Vice Chair Cornett's running the meeting today.
Do we have a new chair already?
No.
We're working on that in probably about 5 minutes time.
Got it.
Vice Chair Cornett,
Oh,
you do have a quorum.
Okay, shall we just get started? Paula confirms that we have a quorum. Okay, I'll call this to order. I will now call the September 16th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. Paula, may we please have a roll call? The roll call.
Carly Aparicio,
Here.
Cody Cornett,
Here.
Alan Easling,
Here.
Philip Mosher,
Here.
Linda Miller,
Here.
and Mark Popoff is absent, and we have 1 position vacant.
I'll just roll us into the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
flag
of
of
the United States
States of America. To
to
the
the
republic
For
which
which
stands
stands
one nation,
nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty.
with justice for all.
Lovely. Unless there are any staff or commissioner comments or corrections, may I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I motion to approve the agenda. And this is Philip.
I will second that.
Okay, agenda has been approved and seconded. Next, there's going to be election of officers, which Alice is going to take over, please.
Yeah, I wanted to
Excuse
just,
me.
oh,
Vice Chair Cornett, you need a vote for the agenda.
Oh, okay. I vote we
Or
approve.
just all those in favor?
All those in favor to approve the agenda, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, now there will be the election of officers, which I am turning over to Alice, please.
yes, our bylaws, oh, well, first of all, just a recognition that our esteemed chair had to step down because he got a wonderful job opportunity in Crook County. He's the planning manager there. So I know he was sad about leaving this group. So that leaves us today with our vice chair leading the meeting. But before we get started, we want to have an election of officers because we do have a vacancy in the place of the chair. So in our bylaws, we have a chair and a vice chair position only. And so the way it was prior to Brent Bybee leaving, he was the chair for the year and the vice chair was Cody Cornett. And so I would be looking, I guess I'm going to lead this for Vice Chair Cornett right now. I open up the forum to nominations for chair first.
I would like to nominate Cody as chair, if he's willing.
I am willing.
Miller seconds.
I guess I'll lead this for you, Vice Chair Cornett. Do we have a vote on a nomination of Cody Cornett and a second for the position of chair of the Planning Commission?
Yes, it sounds like that. So do we vote again?
Mhm.
Okay. May we have a vote, all in favor of Cody Cornett being voted into the chairperson position, say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
So be it.
I think, I don't know, in the past, my observation has been that the formal way to do this is then also to ask for any nays.
Oh, are there any nays?
We're good.
Okay, and then I guess we'll move into nominations for the vice chair position now.
Alan, what do you say?
I'm willing to do it. My only hesitation is I have another volunteer group that meets on the first Thursday of the month, and I may have some conflict with scheduling. I guess that would only be a problem if Cody could not attend to run the meetings. But yeah, I would be willing to do it.
So just to acknowledge what Commissioner Eastling just said, officially you have 2 meetings a month on your calendar. And I think since I've been here, we've only met about once a month. And that has worked for us to do that as our workload, as we have deadlines and our workload increases from time to time, we may need to have the 2 meetings a month. So I think what I heard from you earlier when we spoke on the phone on another matter, Commissioner Eastling, is that the first meeting of every month, you might have a conflict. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, but it's not a guarantee we'll be meeting at that time anyway. Are there any other nominations besides Commissioner Eastling?
Carly, do you feel like you have the time to dedicate to be here most meetings?
I would like to second the nomination of Alan as vice chair. I don't have additional capacity to take on any additional responsibility.
Okay. In that case, let's move this on to a vote.
Does someone want to make a motion? I guess we've seconded that. So, okay, vote, yes.
Okay. All in favor of Alan Easling becoming vice chair, raise your right hand and say aye.
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 All in in favor of having Alan Easley take the vice chair position, say nay. Okay, Alan, you are now the vice chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Time for drinks?
I just want to say as a staff member that I did have a chance to give Chair Cornett, had a couple meetings with him already, and I'll offer the same to you, Vice Chair Easling, is that if it comes to the time when you have to cover a meeting, we'll be here to support you. And if we know ahead of time, we'll definitely give you a briefing ahead of the meeting so you know. And he has a script that we've worked with him on, and you'll have the same from us. So
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
yep.
So far, it's a lot less scary than I thought.
Okay.
I'm already on bullet point 6. So, continuing then, approval of the minutes. Unless there are any other staff or commissioner comments or corrections, may I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
Miller moves to approve the minutes as presented.
Aparicio seconds.
Do we vote to approve the minutes also?
Yes.
Okay. That being said, all in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor of not approving the minutes, say nay. Okay. Public comment. Are there any participants who wish to speak about an item that is not on the agenda of the public? I think there's just us on this show.
We have 2 phone numbers. I know one of them is Linda. Who's the other one?
Oh, this is Mark Popoff.
Oh, you did come on. Oh, great. Hello, Mark.
Yeah, a couple minutes late.
We need to make sure to add Mark to the minutes then.
Okay. I'm guessing Paula's done that.
There are no publics. There will be no public comment. Moving on from that, staff comments and project updates, please, from Alice.
Good evening, commissioners. I have missed you this summer, so it's been nice to have a break. We did have actually a break here in the planning department. We didn't have very many urban renewal meetings either, so we had 1 or 2. I think we had 2 historic landmarks commission meetings. So it's been a quieter summer than we normally have, and we've been able to catch up on quite a few things, and that's been great. But I did miss seeing you. So with that being said, we have some projects underway, 2 of which you'll hear about tonight, and then I know that next meeting I want to come back and just acknowledge again that Commissioner Aparicio had asked us to give a legislative update. I actually attended a small cities meeting of the League of Oregon Cities today where they did just that. So Jonathan Cara and I will be back next month to give you an update on what happened in the legislature and what kinds of issues we might be asked to respond to here this coming year as Planning Commission. And the City Council had this briefing back in July already. So we'll be in front of you next month with that. And then the other thing is I was showing Chair Cornett our whiteboard we have in our conference room. We've been spending some time brainstorming code improvements and things that we can do to improve our code for our customers, but also respond to policy issues that we might be encountering in the community. One of which we already talked about in the spring, and that was sort of ground floor retail in the downtown. That was an issue you already talked about. We might want, and I think it would be timely to go back to that, especially when we're thinking about creating some more incentives for downtown housing in the downtown through the urban renewal efforts. So we'll be back with you as early as next month, maybe November, but I do want to have a work planning session with you where we can do some brainstorming. Not only we can share our ideas, but also get your ideas as to code work that we could be doing this year as some special projects. So I can almost guarantee, it's not 100%, but I can almost guarantee we won't have the heavy lift that we did this past year with the housing code amendments in terms of a state mandated requirement. I don't think we'll have another one like that, although we're talking tonight about one mandated project that we have on our plate already. So that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about things that are happening in the community. I can give you an update on urban renewal projects if you're interested in that. Anybody?
Sure.
Okay, so recreation building, you've probably seen that. You may not know there's a lot going on behind the plywood there. And our urban renewal board's been asking a lot of questions about that. In fact, last week in the morning, no, this week, it was Monday, there was a crane out there placing some structural steel. You may have seen that. And previous to that, there was some machinery out in front putting some gravel. You might be wondering, why was the gravel in there? Well, there's a basalt wall that a lot of these old buildings have that sits up next to the street. To reinforce that structurally, they placed another retaining wall behind it, and then they placed the fill between the basalt wall and the structural, the new retaining wall. So the similar treatment's going to be given on the First Street project, as a matter of fact. And so we'll have some engineers out next week on that project, but we're moving right along on that recreation building. I'm pleased with the progress. The schedule at this point, he believes, Todd Carpenter believes, will be to be finished with all 3 of those storefronts, the exterior part, and all that will remain will be the tenant finishes. Maybe by November, or I think at the latest, maybe January. So moving right along on that. We have an agreement, our renewal agency has an agreement with Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid to have that finished by November, but he can get a couple of extensions to January. So he's moving right along. I get regular text from him and emails. So it's been kind of fun to watch the process. And there is a lot of interesting history inside those buildings. In fact, there's a fire from either the late 1800s or the early 1900s. The blackened beams had been covered for years and years. So he pulled off the plywood or whatever had been covering them, and it looked like it had just burned. I mean, it's just like embers that were as fresh as ever. So it was pretty interesting to look at. So that's happening on the recreational building. Tony's building, that project, we did get approval from the Historic Landmarks Commission to demolish the building. We had to go through a process for that. And we have approval. However, there are some, the potential, because the Dalles is a historic gathering place for Native Americans and also white Americans, the original settlers. There is the potential that we might have some archaeological artifacts under the building. There is a portion of the building that sits below grade that you can access through a very scary set of stairs. It's really dark and scary down there. But anyway, there is a dirt floor and a little partially dirt floor and basalt walls on that portion of the building. The original building was built in the late 1800s there too. So we will need to get an archaeological investigation of that area to be compliant with state law. Anything over 75 years that they find in age will be collected by the state and archived by the state. So that's a requirement. We've done these archaeological investigations before on city purchase property in the downtown. So nothing new. And we're also doing the same on the First Street project. So that will be happening. Originally, we had planned on maybe this fall doing all the asbestos removal, the underground storage tank removal, and the demo all at once under one contract. I've since learned, and to my great pleasure, that we have an EPA grant here that the city was awarded that will give us an opportunity as a property owner in the downtown to take advantage of federal money that might be used to help with the environmental assessment and a little bit of the cleanup work, not all of it, but some of that. So I'm excited about that opportunity. What it means for us is that we're gonna, because we have a grant, it's gonna slow that down a little bit. But what I feel really confident about and good about is that I'm hoping we have no surprises. Our goal, the Urban Renewal Board's goal all along, has been to have a shovel-ready site available for developers. And if we have the right professionals involved, we can get the cleanup done and we can fulfill the promise of having a shovel-ready site that's ready to go for development. So that's happening on that project. First Street project is also staying on track. It is still scheduled to be under construction in summer of 2023. So we still have a couple, it's about 2 years out. What I will say, again, federal money, so strings attached, and it protracts the process a little bit. One thing that's been interesting, I learned that the basalt walls that you see are exposed, for instance, between Washington and Court Street. You see those, if you go park behind the Last Stop Saloon, you'll see that there's part of the street or the parking lot that the Urban Renewal Agency owns is below grade, below the first street grade. There is a basalt wall that is holding up the sidewalk there. And the question came up from our design team, two things. Is that a strong enough wall? Does it have the right structural integrity to hold up the wall in the street? The sidewalk in the street. And then secondly, are there any archaeological artifacts down there? And so next week, I think it's on Tuesday, we'll have a team from our consultants who are designing the project will be down there with a camera. They'll be able to insert a camera and take a look down there and do some investigating to try to get an initial answer to that question. So officially, the walls are listed as a contributing historic resource in our inventory. And so ODOT and SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, are following all the right procedures to make sure we protect that wall in any way we can. So anyway, it's requiring a few extra steps. What will be fun for me is next week will be an opportunity to go down into the basements of all the buildings that are along there. We have right of entries signed by all those property owners and have a chance to look in their basements and see what's going on down there. So I'm not an engineer, but I'll get to see their basements. It's kind of fun. Along the way, I have been meeting with all those property owners and enjoying it an awful lot and hearing what their kind of dreams and plans are for their properties. So that's been exciting as well. So that's the update in urban renewal. Like you, I'm going to be starting a strategic planning effort with the agency board to map out how much money we have left and what projects they might want to accomplish in that amount of time in the last 10 years of the agency's life. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
I do have one point, and I'm sure you probably have that in your mind already, but in the upcoming season of our work and looking at zoning changes, etc., I would personally feel that looking at tiny homes and container homes would be really high on the priority list. I'm amazed how many times I get the question, of course, from a real estate perspective, but with all the challenges we face in terms of affordable housing, in terms of urban density, not being able to expand urban boundary lines, etc., it seems like that should be something that's real high on our priority list.
We've had some questions just this week as well, so that's a point well taken. So thank you. I also heard you say earlier in the summer, you had mentioned industrial design standards as well as another project that was important. So we'll bring back a list next month, and Dawn will be back, and we'll probably have her help lead that discussion with all of you as to setting some priorities.
And if I may, for me, multiple mode transportation and specifically walkability and bikeability of our town is always really high on my priority list also. And I think it's another area where we're really lacking and not taking advantage of opportunities. They're diligently working on completing the bike trail around Mitchell Point. At that point, we will have one of the most scenic bike trails in the country, I believe, going all the way from Portland to the Dalles, and the Dalles will be the end point. And we need to make sure, right now, the Dalles is not a very bike-friendly town. We need to make sure that we're ready and prepared for that, I think, to not miss opportunities.
That's a good point. I don't know if you were aware of this, but the company Bird that has
I'm familiar.
opportunity, you can basically rent on a phone app, you can rent an electric scooter to ride around town, sort of like downtown Portland. That company has approached us about the opportunity to have such a program here in the Dalles. And City Council gave direction to staff to move forward with drafting an agreement. So that could happen as early as, if we reach terms that everyone can agree to, that could happen next year. So
And that would be for scooters or for bikes?
at this point, it's scooters, but I know that their fleet in the Portland area has expanded to be bicycles as well.
Right.
Actually, I think they mentioned e-bikes in their initial information that they shared with the city. I'm not as involved in that project, but I saw the materials that went to City Council. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I know e-bikes are becoming very, very popular, and that opens up some opportunities for us, I think, as a tourist destination. We're a very, very important bike destination for a lot of folks here in the state. So anything else? Oh, I wanted to bring up one more thing. I've been working with the city manager. A city council goal has been to update the community vision. The last time the community vision was updated was in 2011. We've had a habit of updating that every 10 years or so, and it's time. And council wanted us to get started on that. We will start that this fall. And so you will hear about opportunities to be involved virtually and also in person as opportunities become more available for us to meet again in person. So stay tuned for that. I'm excited, and I hope all of you will participate, as you right now are the ones doing a lot of the dreaming about the city, and I appreciate that very much. So, all right, I'm ready to move on, Chair, whenever you're ready.
Oh, great. That being said, do any commissioners, moving on to the next item, do any commissioners have comments or questions unrelated to agenda items? No? Okay. Let's move on to the legislative public hearing. I'm going to do some reading real quick, so bear with me. Now is the time specified for the Planning Commission to conduct the public hearing to consider the following matter. CPA 50-21 by City of the Dalles. This is a recommendation for approval by the City of the Dalles for adding the City of the Dalles Middle Columbia Hood Miles Creek Sub-Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Plan as a Volume 2 background document to the Dalles Comprehensive Plan. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 health crisis, the city's public hearings procedures for tonight's quasi-judicial hearing have been amended. On March 28, 2020, the governor declared a state of emergency for the entire state of Oregon due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 20th, 2020, the City of the Dalles issued its own declaration of emergency due to COVID-19. On April 15, 2020, the governor issued Executive Order number 20-16 titled Keep Government Working, ordering necessary measures to ensure safe public meetings and continued operations by local governments during coronavirus outbreak. Pursuant to Section 2A of the governor's order, public bodies must hold public hearings through an electronic means whenever possible. Also pursuant to Section 2A of the governor's order, the public body must make available a method by which the public can listen to or virtually attend the public hearing at the time it occurs. Regarding public testimony, Section 2C of the governor's order states any requirements that testimony during a public hearing be taken in person do not apply if the public body provides an opportunity for submission of testimony by electronic or virtual means, or provides a means of submitting written testimony, including by email or other electronic methods that the public body may consider in a timely manner. The governor's order is to remain in effect so long as Oregon's state of emergency is in effect. As of the date of this public hearing, Oregon's state of emergency remains in effect. Consistent with the governor's Keep Government Working Order, the city has implemented the following procedures for tonight's public hearing. This meeting is available for public viewing through a live stream that is posted on the city's website. The proposed comprehensive plan amendment and all related documents, as well as the applicable criteria, were posted to the city's website for public viewing. The substantive criteria upon which the Planning Commission will base its decision in this matter are contained in the city's comprehensive plan and land use and development ordinances. Participants at tonight's public hearing must be recognized by the chair in order to speak. When recognized by the chair, please state your name and mailing address for the record. This public hearing is being recorded as well as live streamed. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members. I will open the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about that case. After the staff report, we will hear testimony from the applicants who are attending this meeting via Zoom. The applicants will have an opportunity to present testimony in favor of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, address issues raised in the staff report, and respond to any testimony received opposing the proposal. To expedite the hearing, the commission members may ask questions of person as they testify. When this process is concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with detail specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. Do the commissioners, staff, or applicants have any questions about that procedure? Okay. Have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would not allow them to render an impartial decision on this matter?
I just want to state that I own property that's within the 50-foot buffer zone of Mill Creek. I don't see any reason to recuse myself, but I should state that.
Okay.
Oh, good point. Same here. I own property on Mill Creek.
Okay. Philip, do you feel as though you are still able to perform in your position, voting and deliberating on this issue?
Yes, I do.
Does anyone care to challenge either of those? Either Commissioner Masher or Commissioner Easling? Okay, great. So now, the public hearing is now open. May we have the staff report?
Chair Cornett and members of the commission, thank you for this opportunity. We have before you consideration of a comprehensive plan amendment to add the Dalles, Columbia, Hood, Miles Creek sub-basin total maximum daily load implementation plan as a background document, a volume 2 background document to the Dalles comprehensive plan. This would be a blanket action that you're taking. We would add this as a policy document that would gives us guidance as to regulations we'll need to cut if you decide to move forward with this. We would then need to implement the plan with some code amendments that would impact properties along these creeks. So if specifically the buffers. In 2009, as you read in your staff report, the Oregon DEQ completed a comprehensive study of this area, and it was a requirement, and it's the whole document is found on the DEQ's website. But basically, we are, as a state, we are required to evaluate this area to ensure that we're adequately protecting salmon habitat and the water quality in our area, in our 3 creek subbasin. So that is also a requirement of the Federal Clean Water Act. So that implementation plan was adopted in 2009. We are now getting around to adopting a plan specific to this area. And once this is adopted into our comprehensive plan, DEQ has an expectation of our city that we will implement the plan, and we'll implement it in 3 different ways. One is through regulation. The other one is through education. And then lastly, the other one, thirdly, we will have an expectation of doing some things out in the field. That would be making sure that we can get some trees planted along the stream corridor on private properties or public properties along the way that would help contribute to some shade on the stream that would help reduce temperatures on the stream. So the education component that I mentioned earlier would serve to help property owners understand the impacts of their actions on their own property to the temperature of the stream, so that they can be careful and make sure they're protecting the stream and water quality. So with that, we have completed the findings for we find this to be consistent with our comprehensive plan policies, and would therefore recommend, I'm going to get to the last page of the staff report here, and we would recommend that you, as a planning commission, move to recommend that the city council accept the Middle Columbia Hood Miles Creek Subbasin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Plan as a background document to Volume 2 of the city's comprehensive plan. So with that, I'm completing the staff report. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I do have a question. So we are taking on supervision or management of this area from whom? Who has been performing these duties before?
Chair Cornett and Commissioner Masher, these are new responsibilities. Previously, this was a Clean Water Act requirement. The DEQ finished up with their larger planning effort, and now we're being asked as a local government to take on our own management plan that's specific to this area. And therefore, these responsibilities, we already have, to be consistent with state law, we already have some riparian protection regulations in place in our code. So to manage it, to be consistent with this plan, we have to amend those regulations in the future. So the regulatory aspect has been we're responsible here in community development for that. The water quality aspect, that stormwater quality has been taken on. The overall responsibility for that is Public Works Department here at the city. And then the educational component and the interface and the cooperation and partnerships that we have with our watershed council are also generally a responsibility of the public works staff. So in the future, I would say the regulatory part will continue to stay with us. The amendments to the code will stay in planning. I would expect that in the future, Public Works will take on the additional responsibilities in terms of education and vegetation, the addition of more vegetation in the riparian corridors through here. Does that answer that?
It does really well. Yeah, thank you so much. So, and the geographic area that we're talking about, do I understand it correctly that it's mostly outside of city boundary?
Well, in the plan itself, and I will, I'm going to point you to page 14 of 39 in the packet. You will see that there is a larger map that shows the entire basin, and that basin it actually extends all the way to Mosier, and then all the way east. It includes the 15-mile Doofer, and
right,
almost, I would say, almost to the Deschutes River, not quite to the Deschutes River, right, but that's an entire basin that all flows into 3 creeks that go into the Columbia River.
Yeah, I saw that, and that's what I was looking at. That's where my question comes from. So it looks like a pretty significant part of the county. So I mean, I think this all makes sense. I'm just wondering, why would this be a city management responsibility rather than county?
I guess I'm going to assume, that's a very good question. I'm going to assume that the county has some responsibility too. But that's a good question. I should ask and find out if from DEQ, if the county it also needs to participate in this. I assume they do, and they have, and they will. We are a part of it, and we're at the bottom of the basin. So we are the most urban part of of this area. So it makes sense for us to take some responsibility for the urbanization of this area.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. My understanding has just been that in most other matters, we are very strictly bound to the urban boundary. And so it seems to kind of be non-standard that we would take responsibility for management of an area that is vastly more huge than the city boundaries. Other than that, I think it all makes sense.
I'm looking for it, but I thought I read earlier that this was only applied to the area that's within the urban growth boundary.
That's true.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. So I was looking at that map that you just pointed us to, which of course goes far beyond that.
But
Yeah,
doesn't the watershed have something to do with that also, our watershed?
Yes. So you mean the area that the water supply for the city of the Dalles? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Like Crow Creek Dam and Dog River?
Yes, we probably do have some responsibilities that extend outside the city in those areas. Just in terms of property management, making sure we protect the creeks in those areas.
I have a question. Do we know other locales that have had that are mandated by this, that they have been successful in lowering the water temperatures?
I asked, I think probably the answer is partially. One thing I asked our regional representative with DEQ about that same question, and she brought up an example of property owners in the Pendleton area. So it sounds like there have been some efforts in that area that she had worked on that were an example. But I didn't specifically ask her about reducing the temperature. I would imagine that we're going to be on the hook, rightfully so, to produce an annual progress report every year to DEQ once we've gotten through this process. So they're going to be doing some monitoring, and given that the requirement at the state level was about 10 years ago, it may be too early to tell if we've actually been successful in this effort. I know in the Portland area, and I'm a little more familiar with that area, there have been a lot of really powerful efforts to protect Johnson Creek, for instance, through the Milwaukee area. And they have evidence that the actual salmon habitat has improved dramatically right near the mouth of the Johnson Creek area with Willamette River. But I'll ask that question. I'll find out, see what I can find out in this region.
So in terms of our decision, I mean, so again, to me, this all makes sense, but is there even an alternative? I mean, if we decided, no, we don't want to take this on, then what happens?
Sort of like the same answer I would give you about when you as a commission asked, do we have to comply with middle housing code requirements or state law? And the answer is yes, you have to comply. Okay. So I would say generally you don't have a strong choice here. We have to comply. However, it's the devil's in the details. So if you did look at something, particularly when the regulation changes come your way, if there's something that you would like to adjust, you would have the freedom to do so at that time.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
So I have another question. What about global warming? Can we kind of back that off? Is that what they're trying to do?
Do you mean by back that off?
So, so I'm at a loss for words, Alice. So,
Do you,
I mean,
do you mean to mitigate the
everywhere you
effects of
turn-
it?
Yeah, the effects. Everywhere you turn, you're hearing about global warming, global warming, global warming. And is this to try and again, I've lost a
What,
word.
I think this plan is one step of many that we could put into practice, and we can begin to implement, and would contribute to providing shade along the creek, which in turn will help all of our habitats that are more accustomed to cooler waters through here, which I think would impact help the efforts to slow down climate change. Is that get to what you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thought you might be saying something else, so I'm glad we clarified that. I was wondering if I thought maybe we might use climate change as an excuse for why the water is warmer, so therefore don't have to adopt the plan. And I don't think that's an option, but I don't think that's what you were saying. So.
Well, it wasn't what I was saying, but it makes sense.
All I know is if I
it would
stand.
be-
Oh, go ahead.
It would be a good argument.
Yeah. If I stand on this summer, I had an opportunity to ride my bike along the Klickitat River Trail. And I just know that when I was in an area that had shade, that it was cooler. It's just one of those things. It was on a very, very hot day, and I shouldn't have been out there on my bike at that time. And, and I got started a little too late. But it was just, that's where I really saw that, wow, the water can get warm. It's trapped in this little canyon. And I don't know, it just hit it home for me. A lot of things were hit home for me that day. Anything else?
Alice, does that conclude the staff report?
That concludes the staff report, yes.
All right. Would the applicants, being you, Alice, like to testify in favor of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment?
We're the applicant, so we've already commented, and so thank you.
All right. For this proposed comprehensive plan amendment, we have not received any written public testimony.
None, we've received none since we wrote the scripts, Chair Cornett, so no public comment so far.
Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this proposal? I'm just going down the bullet points here. Clearly, there's no public involved here. Is there any planning commissioner in attendance tonight that has not reviewed the testimony received for this proposed comprehensive plan amendment? Which there is none. Does anyone else participating in tonight's hearing have any questions or comments? Which I believe, yeah. And that's a no. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? Does that need to be a vote, or is that just a head nod? Okay. Well,
I would like to say one thing about in reading this. I am so impressed with the educational part of this, and I think that when our young people are educated and are taking part in doing some of the things that need to be done, it's going to only help our environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Get involved.
I do have a question, one more question on it, and maybe I missed that in the document. From a budget perspective, I imagine that this effort is going to require its own budget, and I'm not sure I saw where that's coming from.
Good question. That's a very good question. I would say that the budget required for amending the code is negligible because it's part of our staff can handle this work. We will get help when we get to city council for the code amendments and planning commission. I may invite, very well likely we'll invite the DEQ professional to be part of this hearing. But in terms of the outreach piece, I do know that there's a certain component of our stormwater quality. We don't get a lot of money from rates for stormwater quality, stormwater improvements. We do have a stormwater system, and I know that there is some outreach work that already happens in Public Works to our watershed council and to do some promotional work with our community. And so it's a good question. I think you raise a really good point that we might need to be ready to answer when we get to the council level, is will we have enough money to implement this plan when, especially the educational components and the tree plantings and so forth. Good point.
Well, it says in this timeline of management strategy number 2, education and outreach, continue to apply for these grants and funding opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So it must be like something that someone knows about, or they wouldn't have put that in there, correct?
Yes. Yes, and actually there are grant funds that we learn about, and we will have the ability to apply for grants for educational programs in the future from DEQ.
I did find where it says that the plan area is only the area that's within the urban growth boundary. It's on page 13 for anyone who's interested in that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Where's Dawn when I need her? She knows this really well.
Okay, everyone all good then? Do we feel we have enough information to make a decision? Okay. The public hearing on this matter is now closed. It is time for the commissioner's deliberations on this matter. So I'll just kind of go around the screen here as I see it, because I know everyone's screen's different. Alan, do you have any specific comments, thoughts, anything like that?
I don't really.
Okay. Carly, any specific comments, thoughts, etc.?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Philip, anything else? Any thoughts?
I've shared all my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Linda, do you have any thoughts or anything?
I've asked my questions and I've shared my thoughts.
Okay. Mark, how about you? Any thoughts or anything to add here?
Yeah, would the county be helping us in enforcing this outside of the urban growth boundary?
I can check the answer to that question and find out if they're involved in this. I can do that. But I won't be able to get you an answer tonight.
Okay.
Okay. I believe we're all good then. Let me get back to my notes.
I didn't write you a note on this, Chair Cornett, but one question you could ask the commission, it sounds like they might be ready for a motion. So you could say, is the commission ready for a motion?
Yes, is the commission ready for a motion? Is the commission ready for a motion?
Yes.
Excellent. Will someone like to motion to approve this recommendation for approval of adding the City of the Dalles Middle Columbia Hood Miles Creek Sub-Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Plan as a Volume 2 background document to the Dalles Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, I'll motion to recommend what you just said.
Sounds good.
I'll second the motion.
Excellent. It's been approved, or it's been motioned and seconded. Everyone in favor to recommend for approval for adding the City of the Dalles, Middle Columbia, Hood, Miles Creek, Sub-Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Program, Implementation Plan as a Volume 2 background document to the Dalles Comprehensive Plan, say aye and raise your right hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay. It has been voted on and approved unanimously.
Thank you very much, Commission. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll now move on to our discussion item, which I will turn over to Alice. This is regarding draft transitional housing code, discussion of a draft transitional housing code intended to permit housing shelters in certain locations of the city, subject to proposed standards. Alice, go ahead and please.
Yes, let me share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation which was included in the packet, but I will run through it here tonight. So, this is an item that was identified by our City Council at their January 2021 goal setting session, and they identified, we learned, I don't know, it was about a year ago or more, that our code does not currently say, it stays pretty silent as it relates to shelter housing in the city. And so when the idea of locating the pallet shelters here in the city of the Dalles came up, we didn't have to rush and change our code because there was the location that the city council ended up choosing happened to be in the public right of way. So it is not regulated by our development code. We were able to do that and to offer that land up through a public right of way encroachment agreement, which our city attorney prepared. So there, we didn't have to have a mad scramble at that time. Since that time, our governor, there's been a lot of discussion about housing, as you well know, at the last two legislative sessions. Our governor signed a Senate Bill 2006 into law in May, which allows shelter housing to be placed almost anywhere in the urban growth boundary of all cities that are, I think, over 10,000 in size, subject to certain requirements. And so right now, as of today, or as of March 14th, excuse me, May 14th of 2021 through July 1 of 2022, shelters can be placed anywhere in the urban growth boundary of the Dalles. However, we want to get a jump ahead. Our city council already knew that they wanted to create this code. So what this will do, it will, assuming it gets passed by you, it gets passed by the city council, we'll have code in place, code language in place that identifies what our values are and where we want, where we think it's appropriate to have shelter housing inside the city. That does not prevent someone, however, from locating something in another location besides those identified in this presentation. So I just wanted to give you that heads up that that's an issue that's been important statewide. So what we did is we borrowed from House Bill 2006 and some other legislation when we came up with a lot of the definitions that are in this code draft. So we have a definition for what homeless means and what established shelters are. This was our definition, and then a seasonal shelter. So there are two definitions. We have one that an established shelter means it's going to be in a permanent building, and a seasonal shelter is one where it's temporarily used for a maximum of 6 months. And here is a general zoning map. I know you're quite familiar with this already, but I show it to you just for background. I can always come back to this slide if you want. So the first question is, where should they be allowed inside our city? What we identified as a staff is that we thought it was appropriate. We found two zones that we thought it was appropriate to locate these uses. One would be the general commercial area. And I include these landmarks just so you know where things are on the map. So you get an idea of where the general commercial area is. We also identified the commercial light industrial zone, and we gave you some landmarks there as well. And that The CG sits on primarily on, well, I guess I would say in the western part of the city. It sits on the southern part of I-84, and then excuse me, I'm going the wrong direction here. And then the commercial light industrial is on the northern part of I-84, north of I-84 primarily. And so if you put those two together, you get an idea of where that we have proposed that the shelter housing be allowed inside the city limits. So for both established and shelters, seasonal shelters, what standards should apply to both of those? And we again borrowed from the Oregon Revised Statute. So House Bill 2006 currently limits who can run these shelters. And one category of operator could be a local government. Another one could be a organization with at least 2 years experience operating low income housing programs or reasonable equivalent. And that could include a local housing authority, religious corporation, or a public benefit corporation as defined below. And then another one would be, in the event that an organization doesn't have those 2 years experience, they can partner up with a nonprofit that does have that experience. So previously, I just want to say in House Bill 2006, the law is the definitions here are a little bit more stringent. And what that does is it places cities like ours in a pickle, because so many cities east of the mountains don't have as much experience, have organizations in their midst that don't have as much experience running shelter housing. And so I loosened this language at the recommendation of, and taking feedback from Kenny LaPointe, who is the executive director of MCAC. And his recommendation is that we loosen it so that and I've already done that here, so that the experience is around operating low income housing programs as opposed to just homeless shelters, because even that organization that currently runs our pellet shelters doesn't have 2 years experience running a shelter. So it would limit it too much. It would be too prohibitive if we went with state law. So what standards should apply to all shelters? First, we have the definition of who can run them. Secondly, we would, and I guess the list would also include some standards. It would be a facility that provides sleeping and restroom facilities. It has to comply with state building codes. Setbacks would be the same as those currently in the CG and CLI zones. Fencing, landscape screening must be provided for both seasonal and established shelters. And then also that we would have an operational plan that includes all the services provided, the bed capacity, hours of operation, and also contact information and an identification of the 24-hour staffing. We want to make sure that the site is staffed 24 hours. Moving on, access. We believe it's important to provide access from an arterial or a collector street. We wouldn't want it, for instance, to put a lot of extra impact on residential or local streets. And fortunately, in the CG and CLI zones, there are more access points coming off of arterial and collector streets. So that is unlikely to be too prohibitive in those areas. We borrowed, you might be wondering, where did we get these standards? We borrowed from our RV park standards for this section here. So you get an idea of some of the access standards. We want to make sure that we're not creating extra burden on our traffic system with placement of these uses. Surfacing, we believe that all areas, these standards would apply to permanent shelters only. Surfacing requirements would require that vehicular and pedestrian walkways are paved and be designed to provide for control of runoff of surface water. Parking requirement, we do believe that it's important to provide parking especially for the permanent shelter spaces, that there shall be a minimum of 1 parking space per every 10 beds and a maximum of 1 parking space per shelter unit. And then parking areas need to meet our design standards already for all other parking lots and as required in the city. Landscaping, All areas not occupied by buildings, walkways, parking, streets, and shelters shall be landscaped. And that's already in place in our code. And that's a good thing. I had talked to Chair Cornett about this a little earlier in the day, and it's important that we maintain green space anywhere in the city, especially given the climate change topics we were just discussing. Shelter maintenance and storage. Our council actually asked that we beef this up this standard a little bit. We want to make sure that all the areas are kept in neat condition. We do want to make sure that we don't have a lot of outside storage of materials, kind of littering up the place. Our council wanted to make sure that we make allowances for storage to be provided for the residents and guests, if so, but we don't want that to be outside. We want that to be in an enclosed space. And efforts, where are we now? Our plan, it was important to get a schedule about this to council since it was part of their goal that they had set in January. So we've been doing some outreach. We went to the unhoused, or I think it's called the Mayor's Unhoused Task Force on August 17th, and collected some comments, had an opportunity to talk to several stakeholders. We're discussing it with you tonight. We will be sending some notices to the state and property owners here shortly, and beginning our hearing process in October. We'll have a hearing with you, and then a city council hearing in November. So that's our schedule. And of course, happy to answer any questions and move to any of these slides as you have questions. I'm looking for your feedback on the code, the locations, everything I presented here, so that I can collect that and make any adjustments that we need to the code, and then get it ready to be packaged for a hearing before you again in October. At this point is our schedule. Happy to answer any questions and accept your comments. Should I stop sharing, or do you want to keep looking at these slides?
I think you could stop sharing. I think we all got it in our packets.
Okay.
I have something that Alice, as part of this feedback, and you're talking to property owners, I'm noticing actually on the commercial light zone that there's a sliver of property that surrounds school district property. So in particular, Wetonka Fields and the Wetonka school site, which is very busy place with lots of little kids. So if, as part of your feedback that you're getting from the community, I would just really encourage you to reach out to the school district and make sure that they are aware of this possible change to property that is near where students will be.
Okay, good point.
Can we maybe just omit that area around Wetonka School from?
I don't even know if it would be a concern, quite frankly. I know that at one point the old middle school was used as a temporary shelter. So I'm not sure how the district would feel about it. I just think that, especially since I know that they have been a temporary shelter in the past, and it's a heavily used area. I'm not sure if it's an area, it would be of concern for them, but I think it's definitely worth the conversation.
Yeah, and this would be something that the school district would have to say yes to. No one could just locate something on their property without their permission. So yeah, it's a good point that we should make it aware, make property owners aware of the opportunity. However, it won't happen unless they agree to it. So on their property that is owned by the school district. Good point. Thank you.
I had a couple of things. Actually, one of them was very similar to what Carly brought up. Could we put in the code a buffer zone around schools or around? I was thinking, I don't like taking my kids down to the play structure that's by the public swimming pool, because there's a lot of people who hang out down there. Like, I'm not really comfortable taking my kids there. So could you do buffers around certain areas?
I think, yeah.
That'd be one thing to consider, maybe.
Okay.
Like, I think that there's something in there about, like the marijuana shops, you can't have those within a certain distance of school. It's something similar to that.
Okay.
The other thing, I like what's in there about having storage, to keep it, neater looking. I think that's great.
Mhm.
Was there something in there, a requirement to have a 24-hour bathroom? A bathroom or 24-hour bathroom?
I think that was implied. It was
Okay.
assumed that the bathroom facilities would be open to residents at all hours.
Yeah,
You make a good point.
Yeah, I've heard that's part of the issue with the St. Vincent's down there, is that they don't have a 24-hour bathroom.
Okay,
The bathroom's only there when they're open.
okay. I think the bathroom area at the pallet shelter is open 24 hours. I haven't heard that it isn't. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I had.
I'll add something that Allison and I talked about earlier, but I'm really happy to repeat it. As far as design standards and making, this is just in regards to the permanent shelters. I really think that a large emphasis on green space and plantings and things like that, even more so than what we require for standard residential. Like in my opinion, it should be like at least 50% of that lot should be green and well-kept vegetation. Not only so that it looks nice for people driving by, and people drive by and say, hey, that's nice, that was great, but also for the people that are there. Nature makes people feel good, give them a soft place to be, a shady place to be, so that they can feel comfortable and maybe be able to make their way to the next point in their life where they don't have to be using that facility anymore. I just think that's really...
we can absolutely add something. Take a look at that.
I think it sounds really great. I know these are really, really complex issues that touch a lot of different aspects, and I'm honestly feeling a little out of my depth in truly evaluating it. I think it sounds great. To me, what's very reassuring is to hear who you have gotten input from and who you have worked with on this. The fact that Kenny LaPointe has worked with you on this means a ton to me. I really trust the guy, and know that he has already, in his fairly short time here, done a ton for our community and for the homeless community here. So that makes me feel really good about it. And I imagine he's reviewed the presentation as it stands now with all the details. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
We had an opportunity also to share it with the St. Vincent de Paul folks, right, and some others who are part of the mayor's unhoused task force.
Perfect. That's great.
That phone call was from our city attorney. I wonder what's happening. Are we doing something wrong? No, I'm kidding. I want to make sure that I say this before anything else, is that I want to thank both Caitlin Cook, our planner, assistant planner, but also our senior planner, Dawn Hurt, for their good work in preparing this code. She'll be back. I assume Dawn will be back in October and will be part of the hearing process.
Alice, one other question. Does the pallet shelter that is currently in operation, does it meet these proposed code amendments?
Yes, I would say so. I'm going to scroll through these quickly and look at all the standards.
I think landscape would probably be the only one, but the other thing I noticed was the fencing comment. So I was just curious if that.
Yes, the fencing that is provided out at the pallet shelters, I believe what they have is a chain link fence around, and then they placed one of those temporary screens on the fence to screen the area. I think technically it meets the requirements. For the permanent shelters, we want there to be it to be a nicer fence and a nicer screen, and maybe with obviously with some added landscaping and vegetation. With the temporary site, there are some limitations as to how much you want to spend, but I think it does look very neat and clean, and they do a pretty good job and so I would say for the most part, yes. We did not, when we started operating when this pallet shelter started operating, it was not being run by an agency that had 2 years experience. However, we did have a partnership with the YWCA, I believe, in Portland. So we did meet those requirements as well in terms of operations. And it was staffed for 24 hours as well.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that if we're putting code forward, that it's actually attainable.
Yes.
So it's nice to know that it's somewhat, I don't know if it's chicken egg, which came about first, but that we've had experience with something that would meet these requirements.
Yes, if it was on private property, however, it would not be allowed in the industrial zone. It would only be allowed in those areas that we've identified. And the bargeway, or that particular area, is in the I zone, except it's in the right of way. So.
Is there any reason why we couldn't locate these in the industrial zone? It seems like that would be better actually than the commercial zone.
Chair Cornett and Mark, Mr. Popoff, Commissioner Popoff, I want to respond to that. We were thinking through, we thought about that option. We think it's better to have it in the CG and CLI zone because of access to services. The properties that are in, and I can share a screen again. Let's just do that so you can see what I'm seeing here. So, okay. Yeah, so currently the I zone is in this area, primarily along the river, a little bit to the, I would say, northeast of the CLI zone, which is in the gray. That is further away from services. So people have to walk further, and we would have to make accommodations for shuttles and everything. And we think that the CG and CLI is that much better in terms of its location and proximity to services. So that was the main reason. We also, you'll hear this from me again and again, we need to be protective of our industrial land so that we're not, I'll say, polluting it. Maybe that's too strong a term, but polluting it potentially is my term, my opinion. I'll stop sharing here. We need to make sure we're maintaining our ability to raise tax revenue, but also produce jobs in our community. And if we place too many nonprofit uses in our jobs producing land, then we might be working against ourselves. So that's one of those things we have to always keep in mind.
We also are limited in our industrial lands.
Yes, very much.
I'll add this, and this is kind of goes along with what Mark was saying. I think it's really important also for these shelters, permanent shelters, or the temporary ones, most of the permanent ones, to have a certain proximity to not only services, but also just what the community can see, so that it can, and if they are kept nice and if they are working, it can be something that our community is proud of. It can also be something that the people who are staying in those shelters feel like they are actually a part of something. When these things are cast out to the outskirts, it's just something that's out there. And that doesn't help those folks, because we're trying to get them moving up and moving along and to better themselves. So getting involved in the community and just having a part of our world is, I think, going to help that. So the more integrated they can be, I think that's just going to be better for everybody.
Any other feedback that you have for us before we wrap up this conversation, but also before we prepare the final code section that we bring back before you for a hearing?
I just had one other question. If there was a shelter area that was out of compliance, what would happen then? I mean, if one got real bad, you know, how would that be something? If they're violating the code, then there'd be something to go back on and say you need to straighten it up. Is that kind of how it works?
Yes, we have code enforcement today for all kinds of things, and we do code enforcement for our zoning code a lot. We have cases, probably have 10 or 15 active cases at all times right now. So yeah, we could come back and I suspect, given that we have strong partnerships with our nonprofit community, that it would be fairly simple to make sure that we clean these up. I don't mean that the problem of homelessness is simple, but trying to get some of the management issues resolved would be something we'd all want to work together on.
Can go along with what Alan said. Can there be an emphasis on more active enforcement and just right, Alan? Is that what you're going for? I mean,
yeah. I mean, if we had real clear, I guess if the code was real clear, and if they weren't doing a good job managing it, then I think it would be easier to get it, you know, fixed. If we were just real clear that, you know, you have to have adequate storage, you have to have bathrooms, you know. And I don't know what all the issues are. I mean, I'm a little out of my league as well with this issue.
Because currently the city of the Dalles is a complaint-based code enforcement as of right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be appropriate for those places to be active enforcement.
Okay.
And not complaint-based driven. It should be like, we check on these once a week or every 2 weeks to make sure they are all in compliance. Like, if we want this to work, it needs to be working.
Good, very good comments, and ones that we can absolutely pass. I think this is helpful to pass on to the city council so they know it's a priority of yours. And I know it will be a priority of theirs, but having you say it, I think, is powerful. I know that one area where we've seen some improvement in the last few months, MCAC has made very strong priority to work on the screening of the folks who are allowed to live in the pallet shelters. And that has, I believe that has contributed to the number of calls that public safety, our police, have had out at the site. So that all those things, it all works together, because I know our police are very interested in making sure this works as well. From a criminal enforcement standpoint, and then of course there are the land use standards as well. We'll be watching that as well. So thank you, good comment.
Excellent. Does anyone else have anything to add before we adjourn? All right, then we shall adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Right,
Take care.
bye.
Okay, bye.